When I was 13 to 17 years old, I lied, stole, cheated, did breaking and entries, sold drugs, did drugs. I ended up in police stations more times than I'd like to count, and I turned out okay. And the reason I turned out okay is I had people who were way smarter than I were. They saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they created a space for me of understanding and love and education of what to do. So when my kids have experienced life because of their smart or not so smart decisions, I've learned to respond instead of react because I knew me and I turned out okay.
How do you do that? How do you just say, I'm just going to return to love and remember that in the moment as opposed to projecting your own ego on the situation?
Welcome to the Bad Mom Podcast, Parenting the Anxious Generation with Vivian Glick.
John Assaraf. Oh my gosh, it is so great to see you here. I'm so excited about having this time with you. We've been friends for a really long time and have watched our kids grow up. So I think the conversation around parenting the anxious generation, particularly with your incredible toolkit, is something that I've been curious and interested and really need to have a conversation about. I want to ask you, what's your secret? What is your secret to managing your own mindset?
The slightly simple answer is I have a very keen commitment to living my best life. And so I really want to go deeper than the surface to understand the cause of things, like why am I angry? Why am I frustrated? Why am I anxious? Why am I fearful? Why am I? I understand we all have these emotions. Why do I react that way to him or her or that thing? So instead of just, living and reinforcing the things that happen in our lives, in my life, I want to understand why. Why do I have a fear of failure? Why do I want people to like me? Why is it important for me to look good in front of others? Why? And if you're willing to look beneath the surface of the stuff and the effects, there's a lot of really good answers. And so that's kind of like part one of the answer. And then I'm highly curious, and I'm highly committed to having, as I mentioned before, my best life, not just for me, but for my wife, my friends, my kids, family. And so I'm a voracious learner. And that's been my jam for 4.5 decades.
That's so interesting about looking for the why. How do you get to the why in your thought patterns?
So I have a couple of things that I might do, right?
That looks like a workbook.
So this is my exceptional life blueprint.
Oh, love it.
And so I have about 65 pages, but I have my life's purpose, my big why, and then I have, in written, my outer mission and my inner mission. But I think if I read to you my inner mission, it's to maximize my awareness and utilize my God-given abilities and genius to become all that I'm capable of becoming, to authentically live my highest values with passion, integrity, purpose, and love. And here's the why: to unwaveringly know that I'm using my life in as many ways that I am proud of and worthy of my life itself. So I refuse to go to my grave with regrets, hoping, wishing, and praying that I would have done what I could have done when I could have done it.
Right.
So I'm very, very deliberate of living my life by design versus default.
Right.
And thinking about, what do I want to trade my very life for? See, every day when I wake up, forget about sleep. I sleep 10 to 6. But from 6 a.m. to 10, I want to be deliberate in what I invest, not spend, invest my seconds on, my minutes on, my hours on. So I don't want to be with people who don't love me, care about me, that want to lift me up. I don't want to settle for less in myself or in those that I love if I can be a part of lifting them up. And I want to make sure that at the end of every day, I can sign my day like an artist signs her painting with pride that the painting I created today, I am proud of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's that deliberateness. And I've seen you do that in your life over and over again. And I want to talk a little bit about parenting, because you have two young men who are your sons now, whom I've watched develop and mature and grow. And I know we've all had moments with them. And one of the things that I think for parents who are listening, or teachers or educators, what I've seen you do is really not react in the moment when things might have not been going according to your expectations. And, how do you do that? How do you just say, I'm just going to return to love and remember that in the moment, as opposed to projecting your own ego on the situation? Does that make sense, the question? Because I've seen you do that. And
It does. And it's hard. So first, let me say it's hard. I have my own expectations, my own rules, my own values. And then you have to remember that we all have gone through phases in our life. And when I was in my 13 to 17 years old, I lied, stole, cheated, did breaking and entries, sold drugs, did drugs. I did a lot of illegal things. I ended up in police stations more times than I'd like to count. I got beaten up. I beat people up. I broke into companies and stole merchandise as a kid. And you can imagine my parents were like, "Are you kidding me?" And then with the drug parts, doing it and selling it, they thought I would die or go to jail. And I turned out okay. So I remember that I turned out okay. And the reason I turned out okay is I had people who were way smarter than I were that understood that I wasn't the person, that they saw. Like I was doing certain things, but they saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they created a space for me of understanding and love and education, of what to do, right? Because the behavior was because of some of my upbringing, right? Moving from Israel to Montreal, failing English, failing math, falling 2 years behind, voted most likely to fail, ADD, parents, teachers wanted me on Ritalin. My parents said no, battling with them. Your kid's not that smart, blah, 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 blah. I thought I wasn't smart enough. So I did these other things to fit in, to belong, and to get some attention and to have some money in my pocket, because my parents didn't have money at all. Enough sometimes to pay stuff. So I was behaving in ways, to feel significant. And so my parents didn't know how to deal with that, but other mentors knew what was happening, and they were able to put me on a different track. And so when my kids have experienced life because of their smart or not so smart decisions, I've learned to respond instead of react. Because I knew me and I turned out okay. And even as an adult, shit has happened in my life. And so I've got the experience to be able to respond. But I also have meditated for 45 years. And so I've learned to be the observer, before being the reactor. And so that has been a trained response versus an automatic reaction. So, part of my practice has been to be able to be aware and then to make a decision. And behind me, I have Frankie's monster over there, right? That's the reactive part of the brain. And then the Einstein part of the brain could be a little bit more calm and logical. So we have these parts to the brain. As somebody who's been a behavioral neuroscience researcher for 45 years, I want to operate from that side of my brain more than that side of my brain. And I practice that every single day. So if you don't practice, you react. If you practice, you learn to respond. So in the absence of practice, we all default to our highest level of training or lack thereof.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a mom and someone who cares deeply about mental health, I'm paying a lot of attention to what I put in my body because I know how it impacts how I show up in my life. And I'll be honest, I never really questioned my coffee until I learned that over 90% of coffee can contain mold toxins and that those toxins can contribute to things like brain fog, fatigue, and that midday crash. Who needs that? That's what led me to try Danger Coffee. What makes it different is that it's mold tested and toxin screened, so it's clean. But what really mattered to me is that it's also remineralized with over 50 trace minerals and electrolytes because most coffee actually depletes your body. And who needs that? Since switching, I've noticed the flavor is dramatically better than my old coffee. And what I love most is that I get the lift without the jitters. And I feel like I have energy the entire day after drinking it in the morning. Because for me, this isn't just about coffee, it's about showing up with clarity, energy, and presence for the people who matter most to me. If you drink coffee every day, this is such a powerful and easy upgrade. Go to dangercoffee.com/badmom for 10% off your order. Again, that's dangercoffee.com/badmom.
And so I want to talk a little bit because a big part of what we talk about on Bad Mom podcast is technology and social media and kind of the fear and the addiction and what is being triggered in our kids' brains when they're captive to this technology. So along the same lines of being able to, and I think as a result, it's kind of built in that a young brain loses the ability to control the animal or the rationale in there. And can you talk a little bit about what is happening in a teen's brain when social media triggers anxiety or fear responses? And then I want to talk a bit more about fear.
Sure. So, for a male brain, the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making, critical thinking part of the brain really doesn't even come online and active till like 20, 22, 25, 27.
Yes, I'm waiting.
And here's what I can promise you unequivocally. One day you'll be talking to your son, and then you'll be having this dialogue, and you will think to yourself, like, what happened? Like, I'm actually having like a real conversation with somebody who is thinking versus somebody who has thoughts. Women, the prefrontal cortex comes online, late teens, early 20s. Males usually early 20s to late 20s. And it's a substantial shift because there's a part of the brain that just is not as active. And once that comes online and that starts to get developed, everything they've learned starts to get integrated into that. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, like, look who you've become. Well, it was because of your love and your kindness and what they've learned from you that is in their memory bank, their long-term memory bank, that then gets integrated with their logical thinking brain. And then you'll say to yourself things like, oh, you were listening. Right? So trust me, do you remember that commercial, Ragu? It's in there. It's in there. It's just not fused because that part of the brain is not ready for fusion yet because it's not active. So, when we're dealing with a young brain that becomes addicted or their brain has been hijacked by doom scrolling, whether they're looking at porn or looking at games, or they're playing games. There's some good stuff and challenging stuff. We become conditioned, and as you know, that's one of my core competencies is how does our subconscious mind become conditioned? How do we develop, our self-image, self-worth, identity, beliefs, habits, behaviors, which are all part of, the basal ganglia part of the brain, or habitual way of being. The challenging news, right now that we've had since the beginning of the internet, and it's been exacerbated lately with AI, is now the AI knows what you're clicking, watching, texting, sharing, saving, watching more of. And if you're wasting a lot of time, or you get really into, guns or games or porn or cats or dogs or skiing or motorcycle racing, whatever it is, the algorithms just give you more of that. And we know that repetition fires and wires neural circuits in the brain. The neurons that fire together wire together. The neurons that fire apart fall apart. But what happens with a lot of our young kids is if they don't have healthy self-image, healthy self-worth, healthy boundaries, then they reinforce the unhealthy ones. And then all of a sudden they have more stress because, well, she's better than me. He's got, nicer hair, or she's got a better face, or she's always made up, or take a look at where she is. And because of AI now, I could be sitting here, in my home studio, and I could have a backdrop right now of a beautiful mountain in New Zealand. I could tell you I'm sitting, on the riverbank here in New Zealand, and AI can make it real. And then you're saying, oh my God, I'm stuck here at school and I don't like it. And so there's this illusion, of this reality that social media is creating, and the divide, between who you pretend to be and who I feel I am gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we have this social anxiety. We have this feeling of less than, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't measure up. And to a 13, 15, 18, 19, 20-year-old person, that's a significant time in your life where you're out of the modeling years from your parents. Now you're in the modeling years of your peers.
Right.
Right. And now when we get into the modeling years of the influencers, right, we go, oh my God, I can't speak like she does. I can't get on camera. I don't have that many followers. I don't have that money to buy that car, to go on that, jet, or to go to buy that thing, or to enjoy my life like that, because here's my story. And so now we're in this comparison society that adults, teens, kids, get sucked into. And then the algorithms keep repeating it. And, a brain that doesn't really think for itself, right? The deductive critical thinking skill, just gets sucked into the emotional part of the game. And emotions wire faster than logic by 100.
Say that again. Emotions wire
the brain faster than logic by 100.
Right. Wow.
Because that's the limbic system. And so now if the limbic system is connected to my survival and safety system, which it is, they're all integrated, and the logical system isn't yet connected to those three. So now my survival, fitting in, being away from pain and discomfort, feeling good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, and then having the emotion drive my behavior and what I want to do more of, which is obviously feel good instead of feel bad. Then I develop these soft and sometimes hard addictions that is very, very hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For a young person to navigate on their own.
Like what you're hearing? Subscribe and hit that like button so more parents can find these tools. Remember, you're not a bad mom. You're a badass in a broken system.
So let's say I'm a mom, which I am, and I'm watching that, or I'm a parent, or a teacher, or an educator, and I'm watching that. What's my counter? Like, what is my offering to push back on that, or to, give a kid the opportunity to see that this is a tunnel that they're going down?
They,
And what's the incentive?
well, they cannot see the tunnel they're going down because they're smarter than you
Of course.
at that age. So
Yeah.
let me share with you some counter strategies, right? There are maybe
Yes.
uncommon wisdom, uncommon wisdom.
I like that. Uncommon wisdom.
Right? So common wisdom would be, I'm the parent. I know, son, daughter, here's what I'm seeing, and here's the trouble you can get yourself into, and here's what you should do. And the kid goes, yeah, okay, thanks, mom. F off.
I've heard that.
That's what they're thinking, and sometimes they'll verbalize it. Let's do an uncommon wisdom. Let's say they're dealing with self-esteem issues, and you know they're behaving a certain way because they feel less than. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to feel important. Have you ever considered, and this I used to do with my sons, both of them, I go, hey, Keenan, or hey, Noah, I need your help. What, Dad? What, Pop? I'm trying to get better at like my self-image and self-worth. I'm feeling a little less than because I'm doing this, and that. Would you be willing to read a book with me, and I'll give you $20 to go through chapter by chapter with me and let's discuss it so I know it? Or would you be willing to listen to this podcast with me and then quiz me on the podcast after each 5 or 10 minutes so that I know it? So now I would pick a piece of information, and I used to do this with books with my kids because podcasts weren't around. They're 30 and 29 now. And at 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 years old, I would have Keenan and Noah reading about 20 books a year that I knew would help them over time. And they think they were doing it to help me.
And that worked?
It worked freaking beautifully.
Wow. Wow.
You know how I knew it worked? Because when their friends were over, they would be reciting parts of the book to help their friends.
I think that's amazing. That's incredible. And I've definitely seen that. And I think sometimes...
By the way, do you know who I do it with now? My wife.
I was going to say with Maria.
I say, hey, Ria, I just listened to this podcast on peptides, and I thought it was really, really good. I'd love your perspective on it. Do you mind listening to it? And let's discuss it during our Saturday morning, couple meeting when we having coffee.
So really the strategy is to have them take it in as their own. And so then they become the projectors and protectors of that idea and thought system. And so they own it as opposed to shoving it down their throat.
Like, listen, how did you or how do you behave or react when somebody like tells you something, when you're not ready to receive it?
Oh, I don't respond well to anybody telling me what to do. It is a terrible situation. I do not take kindly to it. Ask my husband.
Well, I have. No. So I'm looking for uncommon wisdom to help them learn the lesson I want to tell them, but in a different way. So I can't say, but your friend does that or doesn't do that. They F off.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Listen, like I said, I stole, I lied, I cheated, I drank, I did drugs, I did break-in entries, and I knew it was wrong, and my parents knew it was wrong. And the more they told me, the more I said, F off.
Well, you're the neuroscience wizard. What do you call that strategy besides uncommon wisdom? Like what about the way that humans are allows them to accept something when they are asked for advice or opinion versus being told what to do?
When I ask you for help, I'm validating how good you are. And I appreciate you, and I hold your opinion in high regard. That elevates your self-esteem, your self-worth, and if you follow through, your self-trust, which then creates the identity that I want my kids to have.
That's so powerful because identity is everything.
Of course it is.
Identity is absolutely everything. And as humans, we hold so tightly to our identity, and changing our identity from I'm a lazy fat sloth to, oh, somebody feels as though my opinion is important. I mean, that can change everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
Our brain makes sure every day, every week, every month that our external world matches our identity, our beliefs, and our expectations. Let me repeat. Our brain makes 100% certain every day, every week, every month that our outside world matches our identity, our beliefs, and our expectations. When a child is formulating their identity, am I lovable? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I worthy of love? Am I worthy of the friendships? Am I worthy of making it into that group, into that clique? There's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers the stress circuit in the brain because the brain is not safe. The number one priority of the human brain, other than survival, my life, is am I safe? The number two priority or number three priority after that is am I going to experience any pain or discomfort now or in the near future? If we're uncertain, then the stress circuit turns on. Why? Because the brain is predicting a present experience that's painful or a future one, and it counterbalances with behavior to feel safe. Or in the case with me as a child, I suppressed with drugs because I didn't have the skills of communication. My parents didn't have that between them. I didn't learn that. I didn't have the self-trust. I didn't have the relationship with my father specifically, who beat the shit out of me, to communicate. So I didn't have self-belief. I could talk to my mother about everything, but she didn't have answers. She went to grade 3 back in those days. She escaped the Russians invading Romania when she was 12. Whenever I'm looking at a child, it's somebody like there is, for the most part, 99%, no child born that wants to be a bad human, right? So when we're talking about parenting, the question is, can I learn to communicate with my daughter or son, etc., in a way that causes them to feel safe? First, loved, right? And if I have the love, which many of us give our kids lots of love, then can I communicate and understand what phase they are in? So I'll give you a really interesting story that happened to me. Literally, it was, 30 some odd years ago. I went to one of my friend's homes, John, his name was John also, in Indianapolis when I was living there. And I wasn't married, no kids at the time. He was married, divorced, and had a little boy, also named John. And so I went to pick up my friend John, and he wasn't ready. He was just getting in the shower because the babysitter hadn't arrived yet. So he said, "Hey, do you mind just watching John while I take a shower, get dressed fast?" We go, "Sure." So I'm in the living room watching TV with this kid, and this kid's like jumping. He's like, I don't know, 2.5, 3.5. He's jumping from the sofa to this. He's rolling, he's tumbling, he's jumping, he's going, he's this and that. I'm like, sit down, like, be quiet. And I'm like getting really like frustrated and angry, like, what a terrible parent, right? And John comes out, he's getting his hair done, and he goes, "Hey, everything okay?" I said, "Well, kind of. I mean, like, your kid's freaking jumping all over the place." And he looks at me calmly and he goes, "What do you think he's supposed to be doing at this age?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess that." I guess that, right? I guess that's what I did when I was that age. And that actually set up one of the foundational beliefs that I have is we have to know what phase of our child's life they are in at a deep level. And then how do we respond to help them navigate through this phase versus pretending something is wrong? There's nothing wrong. Now, are there kids that may, have an environment that brought up a phase or a of course, but it's still our job as a parent to understand the situation, whether we caused it or not, and have responsibility for that. But then we need to become the better version of ourselves to help them navigate. And sometimes we have to be creative in how we're going to do that. And sometimes we have to be very, very, very strict. And other times we have to be very, very, very lenient.
Yeah. I think what you said about we need to become the version that can accept the phase that they're at, because you fighting a 2.5-year-old to not be a toddler is ridiculous, right?
That's right.
Us fighting a 16-year-old to not be rebellious in every way is ridiculous.
Rebellious, curious, experimental, hormonal, and.
Yeah, I think there, for me, throwing in that unknown thing about technology and the ability to steal my kid's brain was a challenge, right? It's like
Hijack. It's hijacking.
This is new. We don't know. Like everything else, yeah, that rebelliousness, experimentation, etc. There were known things that they could get into, which sometimes could be super dangerous. Like I'm sure you and I both put ourselves in super dangerous situations at 16 or 17 years old, which luckily our parents didn't really know about. If there was Life 360 on me when I was 16, I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Well, listen, alcohol addiction is real. Drug addiction is real. Driving too fast, using your cell phone and killing somebody and yourself is real. So these are real dangers. And as parents, we are preventionists, where we want to prevent our children from dying or killing somebody else or being, addicted and dying, because we don't want to deal with the pain of that, because we don't believe we have the skills to, and we obviously don't want them to hurt themselves. And the threat is real, right? Remember, our brain is a prediction organism. So it's predicting what may happen right now or in the future, but it's releasing the neurochemicals of that prediction in the present moment. So it causes us to feel a certain way. And if we don't know how to downregulate our own emotional center, the amygdala, and for example, when you're feeling anxiety or stress or doubt or fear or worry or panic, that is because the sympathetic nervous system is activated, releasing cortisol in many cases, etc., that's running in your bloodstream, and you don't know how to self-regulate. So part of the issue is you don't have the skill to deal with your own emotion, and that means that you're reacting, from the wrong part of your brain. So the first thing is responsibility for self to know how to downregulate my own emotions. And in many cases, fear, and worry and doubt. And then we could teach our children this. Listen, I just came back from a ski trip, and I've been going with my kids on a yearly ski trip for 20 years. And so during the ski trip, my eldest son, Keenan, 30, said, "Hey, I'm having this challenge." And I said, "Okay, great." And I said, "Like, what are you doing to remove this challenge?" And he shared with me what we're doing. I said, "Well, have you considered that if this challenge keeps coming up, and you're in a state of stress, then you're not down-regulating your stress circuit, right? So down-regulate means you're turning it off." And so I said, what are the techniques you learned when you were 5 years old and 6 years old and 7 years old and 12 years old and 15 years old around breathing and using your breathing to down-regulate first before you try to make the change? And he goes, "Totally forgot, Dad." And so I said, "Great, let's practice right now." I swear to God, 7 days later, which was last week, we've been back for a couple of weeks, we're doing our father and son weekly talk. "Hey, Dad, oh my God. I mean, it's gone. I've been doing it for 5 minutes every morning, down-regulating, my stress circuit, using visualization to see me overcoming the obstacle. That's called mental contrasting. So teaching your brain, here's the situation. downregulate the emotion that naturally percolates up, stress around that. Downregulate it first while you think about it, see the outcome that you want, take one action towards that. 7 days, it was gone. So, if you as a parent don't know these techniques, you're ignorant, not knowing. And then if you don't teach these to your kids, who do you want to teach them to your kids? We have the most powerful computer in the whole world, your brain, worth $100 billion. Most parents, most students, most kids don't have the user's manual for it. And that's why I created Innercise, because we can strengthen our muscles with exercise. How do you strengthen your brain's neuromuscles? We have 7 neuromuscles, right? How do you strengthen those? And most people have no idea because we've never been taught that. So in many cases, we are ignorant parents, and we're dealing with circumstances that, we want to blame and try to fix without having all the tools.
Well, to that point, I sort of my last question here, and probably one of the things that I'm dealing with the most and I'm seeing the most is, Gen Z, the Zoomers, are now the doomers. So they are seeing the world in a doomsday light, like everything is going. There's absolutely no good outcome that can come out of any of this. The political situation, the technology situation, the housing environmental imbalance of wealth, etc. And I know that this is, and I deal with it all the time. And I don't know, I don't quite know how to manage the switch on that, that dialogue. But I do believe, we were talking to a really prominent thought leader like you last week, and he's got everything. He's got all the technology, all the tools, and all he wants to do is create a framework and coursework around mindset, because he sees this as the most important human evolution given what's coming with AI. And so, kind of as we wrap up here, what would you say, because you know them, some doomers, I'm sure, to shift the mindset away from proving the point that the world is coming to an end? Well, that's great, but we're here right now. How can we be in the moment and enjoy it, and be the ones who help others to envision a positive future?
Yeah, so let's understand maybe a little of philosophy or reality. Can you have an up without a down? Can you have an inside without an outside? Can you have a good without a bad? The answer is no, you can't have. That's called the law of polarity. And so my methodology for educating is teaching through examples and stories. So is nuclear power capable of destroying humanity in a city? Yes. Is nuclear power also capable to light up a city? Yes. So nuclear power isn't the problem, it's the use of it. Can we use a knife to kill somebody and then clean it up and then use it to slice a tomato for lunch? Yes. Can we use a car to drive into a crowded area and kill people or get us across the country or the world? Yes. So whenever somebody has a mono view of something, it means that their brain is fixated with cognitive biases towards that. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially since what we talked about before is that we're all addicted in one way or another to what we believe. But then if we're on social media, if we watch the news, we usually watch the news and social media to reinforce our current beliefs. That's cognitive biases. So an educated person is able to learn and hold both opportunities and possibilities, okay, at the same time. and look at it as an objective view of polarity. And so, when I have these dialogues with my kids, who we're on opposite ends of, political beliefs, shall we say. And I say to them, I say, hey, are you open to growing and learning? Yes, great. Let's have a 10-minute dialogue. Show me the evidence for your viewpoint and beliefs and help me see it through your lens. And they'll show me. I go, wow, that's really, really interesting. And I said, now, have you done the research on this information to make sure it's valid? And in many cases, the answer is no. And being a researcher, I know how to do the research on the research, right? So I said, if you're open-minded, which I know I've trained you to be as a child, as an adult, let's go one layer deeper and see if we can find evidence for this truth. And so let's go deeper there. Now, let me show you my viewpoint so you see it from my vantage point. So show me, don't tell me. And then let me show you the evidence for this viewpoint now, based on what you know now to be, in front of you. Which do you choose, to reinforce? And then if you've done your job at showing them the polar opposite with the evidence that they need to see and feel, then that's about the extent that you can take. Because trying to change somebody's mind, I wrote a great article. It's on my John Assaraf blog called "Why Facts Don't Change Minds." And it's all based on where we gather facts. There's a part of the brain that is gathering the facts. That is the prefrontal cortex. But our beliefs, right, are based in another part of the brain called the basal ganglia, and that's what runs the autopilot. And so whenever we're looking to help somebody shift their perspective, there has to be some kind of an emotional event, okay, that gets them to feel the difference that they believe. And so I'm always looking for this uncommon wisdom or uncommon ways to use how somebody's brain works, especially a teen, right? To show them that, hey, from your vantage point, yes, you're right. But from another vantage point, this is also right. And both opposite polarities always exist. So we can focus on this, or we can focus on that. And if you need to go back in time, says this has been happening since the beginning of time. People believe this, and then they defend what they believe, and people believe that, and they defend what they believe. And this is why we have wars, and this is why we have what we have going on right now. A political divide, wars all over the world, Europe, Middle East, etc. But we have really loving, caring, kind people, 98% of them, with some extremes on both sides, that because they're so polarizing and willing to die for what they believe, they draw us in and suck us in to their viewpoints. And most people aren't willing to go deeper than the surface. Why? Because we're cognitively lazy.
Well, and also I think it goes back to identity, right? So if this is what I believe and I identify with that tribe, really, it's tribalism, then I have to defend it with everything I know. Yep. Until I have enough information and there's a crack in my attachment to that identity. And I think that is so important. So I've learned so much from you over the years, and I just have so much admiration for everything that you've been able to accomplish, but mostly how you just uphold that commitment to squeeze the juice out of every day and be a major contribution to the world. So where can we find out a little bit more about John Assaraf and NeuroGym and your books, and where can we find out more?
My books are all on Amazon. So John Assaraf, you can find Innercise is a great one for every parent to read. Having It All is a super one for helping kids set goals and achieve goals. I'm on Instagram every day. I do videos, and so I'm on YouTube and Instagram a lot, and Facebook also. And I'm producing content every day to help people. And then at myneurogym.com, people can actually take for themselves a neurofitness assessment that'll tell them which of the 5 brain types they are, which of their 7 core neuromuscles are weak or strong. We all have weak or strong, like physical muscles. We have weak or strong neuromuscles. And then we'll recommend some exercises they could do on the NeuroGym platform that is an AI and human powered platform to help people shatter limitations, get rid of stuff that isn't working, strengthen their neuromuscles so they can live a life that they love and fulfill more of their potential.
And do you think that this would be useful for teens also?
Absolutely. Here's the beautiful part with teens. At the teen age, we have, a moldable, pliable brain. Like our brain is plastic. It's called neuroplasticity, right? So our brain can change, but the older we get, the more wired and locked in our beliefs and identity and values and habits are. So we have to undo, right? We have to refire to rewire those patterns. But when a child is young in the imprinting, modeling, and experiential years, and teens heavily experiential years and still modeling, their brain's firing and wiring at rapid speeds. So if we create that environment for them, if they're willing, to do some Innercise, or at least to learn how to have more mental and emotional control, first they need to become aware that they have these abilities. Then they need to learn how to manage them. Then they can learn how to master them. But the first part is always awareness. If I can help you become aware, you're more likely to make empowering decisions. So awareness can give you choice, and choice is what can give you the freedom you want. And as a parent, what else do you want for your child? The awareness that they can change their life and or make decisions that keeps them safe and makes them feel like they're fulfilling their potential, and they feel great about themselves instead of insecure and not worthy or smart enough or good enough or deserving enough and less than.
Yeah, 100%. That is what we want for our kids,
Right?
for sure. Yeah. Well,
And
John,
enabling them is not the answer.
was that enabling them?
Enabling them is not the answer. Can I give you one last bit of advice that was a game?
Absolutely.
When my kids were very, very young, and I want to be a great dad, and Maria wants to be a great mom. I used to ask my kids when they were very, very young, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Hey, what's my responsibility as your father? Well, to love us. Yeah. To hug us. Yeah. To feed us. Yeah. To make sure we have a nice house. Yeah. To go to school. Yeah. Yeah. All that stuff. Is my job to keep you safe, or should I just let you get hurt? No, keep us safe. Is my job, to have you trust me and know you can rely on me, or to be all over the place? You don't know if you can trust me and rely on me. No, to trust you and rely. So I had them come up with what they expected for my role and responsibility. Part 1. So they came up with the rules. Then when I had to discipline them by saying, no, you can't do that, and they go, why? I said, well, what's my role as your father? To keep you safe or to let you get hurt? So I would bring back the rules of what my responsibility was. And now it was me being a great dad by fulfilling my responsibility as a dad or a mom. So if you don't know the rules, if they don't know the rules of why you're doing what you're doing, you're the bad parent.
Right.
But if they know the rules because they helped create it,
right.
And now what is your role as my child? So we had these rules, right, that I wanted to be a really great dad, and that you need to help me be a really great dad, and I'm going to help you be a really great son. So set up some rules and expectations with your kids.
Well, I love that. It's all that inverse psychology, rather than telling them, you're asking them. And so you're getting that buy-in. Yeah.
People defend what they participate in.
Yeah. So true. God, that's so many things to remember about psychology and managing relationships. So we can find out more about it at NeuroGym. I'm going to go take the test. I've taken it before, but I'm going to take it again. I'm really inspired.
You haven't taken this. What's the new one?
I'm sure I'm down for it. I love it. I'm sure I've got a lot of weak parts. But anyway, John, so happy to have you here. So glad to have you in my life. And I know this is going to be a huge episode for so many parents.
Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Congratulations on everything you're doing. You're brilliant.
Thank you.
Head over to badmompodcast.com/overcome fear, where you'll find the complete show notes, links to every resource we mentioned, and much more. That's badmompodcast.com/overcome fear. You're not a bad mom. You're not a bad parent. You're a badass in a broken system. Keep fighting. We've got your back. This is the unlearning. This is the undoing. This is the uprising. Bad parents unite because they'd rather you stay silent.